In this video, I'm going to show you how to grid your paper and enlarge your master painting using that grid. So first off, I am working with a square. And with the square, whether you're working with a square or with the 3:4 aspect ratio, you're going to want to come in 1 inch on each side. Now, as I measure the paper, I discovered that the paper isn't quite 14 inches across. So I am going to put a mark here on the number 1, and then over here on the number 13. And then I'll do the same for the other side. Whenever you want to make a straight line, you want to keep it parallel to the edges of the paper. So that is why we need to make those 2 marks instead of 1. Then I line up the ruler, even with those 2 marks, pull that line over, and do the same thing down there. Line it up, put my non-dominant hand in the middle of the ruler, and lightly pull that edge over. Now for the square, you're going to want to come in 2.5 edges, 2.5 inches from the edge on each side, because you want a 12 by 12 inch square, right? So what I did was I measured down 2.5 inches, then I'm going to put a mark at 12, and as you can see, that's not quite 14.5. So I'm going to do the same thing here, and I'm going to put a mark at 2.5, and then I am going to just ease my ruler down, shift it down, and put a mark at 12, because again, my painting is going to be 12 by 12 inches. Now I'm going to draw this line, and as I draw this line, I'm going to put some marks where my grids are going to go. And I decided that I was going to go with grids that are 4 across, and what that means is instead of 4 inches like our last project, I'm going to put the mark at each 3-inch interval. So it's going to be 3, 6, and 9. So again, do it on the other side, because that's how you draw a straight line that's parallel to the edge of the paper. So 3, 6, and 9. And we'll pull that over, boom, like that. And here I go. I need to put my marks on this side and the other side. So 3, 6, and 9. Now, if you did the 3:4 ratio, aspect ratio, okay, you're going to do this a little bit differently. All right, so just finishing up, putting these grid lines on here. And when I'm drawing my grid, I'm using an ebony pencil, mostly so it shows up on the video. But no matter what kind of pencil you're using, you want to make sure you're not pushing down too hard. And I'm just lightly pulling it across, because I really don't want to make an indentation in my paper. If I use a pencil that's too hard, or even if I use a soft pencil, like a 3B or a 4B, and if I push down too hard, I may have an indentation on my painting. So there it is. The grid is prepared. It's 3-inch grids and 4 on each side. Okay, so for this video, I'm going to use my camera to look at my image. You may want to open your image up on your large computer screen instead, but for the purposes of this video, I think this will work the best. So what I'm doing right now is I'm opening it up on my screen so I can see 2 squares at a time. And I'm going to start by looking at where this is in relationship to that line. And I would say it comes maybe a little bit less than 1/4 right there. I always plot my lines out first. So if I go from here to here and I look at where that is in relationship to the line, that entire line from here to here, I would say I would go up to about 1/3 right there. Now for her head, as I'm looking at that, it comes to right here, which is a little bit to the right of halfway. So that's halfway, a little bit to the right. So now I'm going to work on that curve after I plot out those lines. And looks like maybe I could have gone a little bit higher here. And when I do the curve, I'm going to draw sort of nice and light and let my hand kind of swing around a little bit. And then I am curving around like this. Now I'm going to plot out all my basic shapes first, and then I'm going to come in and I'm going to work on the details later. So after that, I'm looking at where this line crosses, and I would say it's about maybe 1/4 of the way down, maybe a little bit like that. And then this is like coming around this way, and there's a curve like that. So of course, you know, you want to really look at your negative spaces as you're drawing. Now I'm seeing this dark shape come out here and around, and then it crosses here. Now if I look at this line from here to here, what I'm seeing is that that is about the halfway point. So it's a little bit above the halfway point. So I would say that goes to about here. So that curves around this way, and then it comes out a little bit. I'm really staring at the shape of that shadow right there. And I also want to make sure that I keep my phone in line with the grids. So this is coming right up like that, and that kind of swings around like this. Okay, so continuing to work with this dark shape, I'm looking at where that is in relationship to the that line. So we've got that line right there. That comes to about there. I'd say maybe less than 1/4. And then I'm asking myself, is it a vertical? Almost a vertical. And then what does this do up there? That kind of swings around, and I'm looking at where that is in relationship to this. And I would say, you know, I'm trying to get this in proportion, that that's right about there in relationship to that. Now, if you're drawing faces or figures, it's going to be more important to get them in proportion than when you were drawing your trees and negative spaces between them. Now I'm looking at that point there, and I'm seeing where that is in relationship to the grid line. It's pretty close. I would say it's about there. So now I'm looking at this angle right there. That angle's like that, curves around a little bit, comes down like that. And here there's like a little hook that hooks around a little bit like that. Okay, so that's that shape. All right, now, looks like some crazy profile here. That's a chin right in there. Okay, I know it's not. I know it's a shadow, but you know, that's my imagination always goes a little wacky when I look at this stuff. And anyway, now I'm looking where that line is in relationship to this, and I would say that's about there. So again, I've made a decision to really just block out some of the basic shapes of the shadows first. And it'll act kind of like a map for me. Now I'm looking at this distance here, looking at that distance there. I'm looking at where that is in relationship to that. I'd say it's about right there. And now I've got my hand frozen, and I'm kind of moving my elbow to get that curve like that. And then that swings around like this. And then, like I said, I was pretending that was a funny little chin. That's curving around like that. All right. Now, one of the reasons why I'm doing this is so the drawing isn't as overwhelming. So it just helps me to get some of these basic shapes down. All right, so that dark shape comes right about here, and that comes over there like that. That's pretty much a horizontal coming in here. Okay, and then that curve comes around and down. Now I'm looking at where this is in relationship to that. It's about maybe 1/3 of the way over. Okay, so that kind of swings around like that. This comes down here. Now where is that in relationship to that? Maybe it's about 1/3 of the way up. And this is kind of like halfway in the middle of the square, so I'm about where I need to be, halfway in the middle. That comes down to about there. That swings up like that. That curves in like that. Now I'm looking at where that is in relationship to that. So if I have that indentation here, I'm looking right here, and that kind of swings around like that. That's a horizontal a little bit in there. Then that it curves up and around. And then this comes around like this. That gets in pretty tight there. And then that comes down here like that. And then in. And all right, then I'm kind of working on that shape there. In there. Oh, that's what I did. I'm getting ahead of myself here. I made that connect wrong. That's funny. All right, so this came in there. That comes down like that. This curves in. Aha, that curves in like this. That curves around like that. That's what happens when you get in your head. I was like focused on making the video and not totally concentrating. Okay, so now this is like that. And this is the black area. Now, what I'm going to do that's helpful is I'm going to write B for black. And later I'm going to figure out something to write for my grays. I'm thinking I might want to write like 1, 2, and 3 for my different types of grays. Okay, let me try to stay focused. This is a little bit less than halfway up. So if that's halfway here, that's about like that. So now I'm looking at that shape there, looking at that shape. So that curves around like this. And that curves up a little bit, like in there. Looks a little like a cat profile or something. Okay, so then I have another black mark in here. And I'm looking at that and where that is in relationship to that. And that comes kind of like this. Now here's the funny part. What am I drawing? Like right now, I think it's the beautiful dress with all the wrinkles, you know, the gathers of the fabric that I'm drawing. But does that help me to think about that? And the answer is no. It doesn't help at all, which is kind of crazy. But that is one of the keys to drawing. And when you're drawing, you don't want to think about trying to make something look like something. You just want to draw what you see and hope for the best. Now here I see this black shape here, so all that's black. This black shape comes there, which is maybe about 1/3 of the way over. And I want to make sure my phone's still lined up there. So that maybe is about 1/3 of the way over. I'm looking at that angle here. I'm seeing where that is. I'm seeing this width in here, that width in there. I want to look at where that is in relationship to that. You know, so this, let's see, that looks like that comes in about like that. And then this kind of angles down into there. And then that has a little curve like that. And again, that's black in there. Okay, so as I'm working here, I really want to analyze the different types of grays I have. And I see I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different grays, and I was really only supposed to keep it to 4. So, you know, I might simplify it a little bit, and I might combine some of those grays together. So we'll kind of see how it goes. But I'm going to use 1 for my lightest gray, 2 for my second lightest, and 3 for like the middle gray, and if there is a really dark gray, oh yeah, the darkest gray will be like a 4. Okay, so, and I'm going to color code them. What I'm not going to do is I'm not going to label the white. Black, I'm going to label black. So I'm doing that because I think it's a really good idea, so I won't get confused, because as you can see, that can happen. All right, so continuing on, working with like the shape of her face here before I get into the features. But actually, as I'm thinking about it, it might be a good idea to work from here, like do that whole area right in there. Okay, so I kind of talked myself into that. And I know where this starts, and this is good because I have that whole square open. And now, of course, after my one mishap with the square not being open, I'm being a little bit more cautious about that. So I can see this comes down like there. There's like a little indentation here. And now I'm looking at where that darkness is, realizing that that's a shade on the side of her shadow. And this is a little bit higher than that. So if that's here, that's a little bit higher than that. So maybe this comes in around there or so, right? So then this dark shape's coming out like that. And I can see it comes here, which is like about a third of the way over. So maybe that's about in there. And that's curving around here. And that has a nice little curve there, swinging around like that. Okay, close enough. Sounds like they're cleaning the streets right now. Anyway, for the lightest area, for the white, I'm looking at where it is in relationship to the center grid line there. I'm seeing how much it drops down. I'm looking at it where it is in relationship to the side, right in there. So this is going to come there, around like that, and that's going to be the shape of her forehead. So that's curving around like that. Okay, so as I'm working on that, now I see this next shape of gray that comes in here. It gets pretty close to there, comes down there, and then it's pretty close here, and then that curves around like this, and then that comes up. You know, your grid and your posterized shapes, they are a guide for you, you know, and you're going to draw them as closely as you can as you're looking at them. But, you know, like as I was working, I found out that I had like 5 shades of gray instead of 4. You know what? So what? What does that mean? It means that I have to combine some of the shades of gray and change things up a little bit. But, you know, we're artists, we're designers, that's what we do. So this is a guideline. All right, so that's 1. And 1 is going to be for my lightest shade of gray. Now, for her eye area, it's really the hollow of the eyes, you know, because eyes are in sockets. And so that is coming in here, coming around like that. You know, and there's space here for different shades of gray. But I'm not going to fit in 1, 2, 3 stripes. I'll probably just put 2 stripes in there. And then that kind of swings around here. And that's going to become her shoulder. Because the way this is, you know, from the perspective is that the viewer is sort of on top looking down at her. Interesting. Okay, so I'm working on this section in here. And one thing I want to check is where this little hook shape is in relationship to the grid line. So if I pull that over and I see where that is, I'm actually shutting one eye, it comes about half of the way down. So from here to here, and I can kind of measure like that if I'm uncertain, and from there to there, it looks like it's a little bit low. So that's something that I want to shift up before I go any further. So I'm going to take that, I'm going to make it come right about there for that little hook shape, and raise that up, a little angle in here, then that comes up. And you'll notice I'm not pushing down too hard as I draw. So then that swings around. I'm looking at that space in there. That seems about right. And this circle, the bottom of it is pretty much even to that hook shape, so that's going to shift up for me. And I can see that circle is very, very close to that grid line. So I want to get that in close to the grid line. Looks about that big. And then that curves around here like that. There's more space on this side. That swings around like this. And then there's that hook shape here. That comes around in there. And then this should come in a little bit more like that. And that looks like it's almost vertical. All right, so that little hook shape there, that kind of goes like that. And as I step back, this looks a little bit long, so I'm going to adjust that. So it is important that you get your drawing, especially around the face, as accurate as possible. So you're really, really looking at those proportions and where your shapes are in relationship to the grid lines. All right, so I'm kind of ready to advance now. And I'm looking at where that tip of the nose is here in relationship to that black hook-like shape of her shadow, and it's a little bit above that. So even though you have a grid line drawn, you have to do a little bit of sighting to see where things are in relationship to each other. So this little curve, that is going to be looking at where that is in relationship to that, and it looks like this has to get moved up a little bit, so I'm going to shift that up too. So this is going to come around here. Now I've got some shapes of some shadows in here, and I think right now that's going to help. This curves around here, that comes in like that, that curves around there like that, that comes up there like that, that curves around there like that. And I know there's more lines around here, but it's getting a little bit complicated. Okay, and then this comes down here, and then it swings out a little bit. I'm following that line. That curves out a little bit. That comes around there in relationship to this, that black hook. So I would say that comes about right there in relationship to that. And then this is going to curve around, and now I'm looking at where that is in relationship to this. And I'm seeing where that is, and then kind of curving that around. And that is going to, become that. As that curves down, this is coming in here. And I'm looking at where that shape is in relationship to that. And then in here, that gets a little tighter, and I'm just going to kind of swing that around like this. And I know there are more lines in there, but I think that's good enough right there.